everyone. It's great to be here, and thanks to Meet Magento team for having me back for the second time. Today I'm going to talk about website performance killers. And we know that performance is everyone's responsibility. Be it you in the marketing department, in development side, or a business stakeholder. Performance is everyone's responsibility and we care about it. For me personally, why I want to talk about this is because I neglected it in past when I was developing stuff. I wasn't taking care of the performance sides of things, but more about shipping things faster, which we all know is very important in this era. But it's also important that we take care about performance. And when I started learning more about it, I got fascinated about the pros your business can have and the significance of performance in everyday development as well. So let's start. A little about me before. I'm Balvesh Singh Rakkar. I work as solution architect for Ascend. I'm an Adobe certified architect and also subject matter expert. I love solving problems and also diving deep into performance issues. I love to have that detective lens when I'm investigating these issues. So today I'm going to talk about what is web performance. I know we mentioned a lot about it is important, we need to take care of it, but let's first understand what is it. Second, why it matters. Why do you guys care? Maybe your website is 10 on 10, it's perfect, but these factors over here will ensure it stays that. It enforces that. Another thing is measuring performance. How do we measure it? We know it's important, but how do you measure performance? Then comes the factors that are actually affecting performance. So to start with the first one, what is web performance? It is basically perceived user experience. As a user, you load any website, how fast it seems to you is basically web performance. In other words, again, how fast it could seem to a user can determine how the performance of the website is and what that is. It is harder to quantify. You hear me talking about it seems to the user. It could seem faster to some person, but slower to others. So how do you quantify that? That becomes a tricky place, but even more important now. A good goal is users to not even know about it. We go to a good restaurant, the server is very nice to us, it's very seamless, we hardly notice that, but if we get a bad experience, you will definitely remember. Maybe put a Google review as well later. So a good goal is not to even notice that and let users go through the checkout and get their product seamlessly. Let's talk about why it matters now. We know that performant websites attract conversions. Good performance means good conversions and high chances of improving those conversions as well. If your website is good with performance, you are more likely to have retention in customers and ongoing sales as well. Vice versa, slow content makes users frustrated. They might abandon if the website is not working very smoothly and might not even return and might even spread that word of mouth, but in a negative manner for your brand. Good performance may not be obvious, but sluggish sites are definitely obvious to users. That's why we care. This is one instance from MDN WebDoc where there is an example taken of CNN.com. 22 MB in size and around 400 requests on the website. It will seem very fast on fiber desktop, but on the other hand, on a slow 3G mobile, the experience will be very slow. Maybe the site crashes, maybe not even load. So you can see how the experience varies. Let's also talk about beyond speed is the data that is being downloaded. Across the geographical region, there would be places where the data is metered. That means that 22 MB is costing someone's allowance for the day too. So we can see how the same website is having different experience with different networks, location, device types as well. So how do we measure it? Now we know that it is very important for us to know about performance, but how do we measure it? Here is where Google comes in the play as well. Google has invested a lot in site speed. They talk about Web Vitals, which are a set of metrics that tells you how well your website is performing. More important is Core Web Vitals, a subset of Google Web Vitals that Google states that every website owner should be measuring. And these are not just metrics, these are basically feeling. A customer coming to your website, interacting with it, how they feel about it is measured through these, which I'll talk more about. And before talking about the metrics, I would like to mention a term called viewport. So when a page is loaded, the area that the user sees right then is called the viewport basically, but also the area we are more concerned about. That is the first impression anyone is going to get off our website. So all these metrics talk about that viewport area. And starting with the first one is loading, which is largest content paint being the core web vital. So a page is loaded. The first biggest content you see on that page is called your largest content paint. For home page, that could be a banner. A product page, that could be the product image. And category, maybe a banner or the category heading as well. So we want that content to show up as quickly as possible because that is going to make the biggest impression. Vice versa, think about a product page loading very slowly, or it has loaded, but the image coming out after like 4 seconds of delay. Not a great experience to the user. So we want that largest content paint to display as quickly as possible. Google has set some measurements for measuring that load as well. Then comes the interactivity part. Once the page has loaded, how quickly the website is performing to your touch. Maybe it's add to cart for an e-commerce website or a drop-down or anything that should act as quickly as possible when you interact with it. That tells you how well your website is performing in INP, interaction to next paint. Google also has metrics to measure this, and then you can see which area your website falls into and take it from there. Lastly is the layout shift. We have all been in this scenario where the website page has loaded, but you were trying to click something, interact with something, but some image or something pushes that content below. So it creates that frustration in the user. The layout shift causes that experience to degrade. So layout shifts become important in that manner. The less fluctuation in the layout that gets, the more seamless your website would improve. And it's not just metrics, and we talked about how all these metrics are related to the perceived user experience and the feeling that they get, because all these are related to customer experience. But these metrics also talk about they are shown to be proven to improve your business. This is a metric from New Relic's website that shows improving your core web vitals for your business are very crucial, and they improve conversions as well. So now we have established what is performance, why we care about it, and how to measure it. Let's talk about factors. And the first factor to start with only makes sense, tracking them. So if you're not tracking them, then we are missing out on the opportunity of learning about our customer experience and improving from there. With deployments with companies shipping faster these days, we barely care about, or we do, but not to that great extent, care about if it's improving the experience with each release. So measuring Core Web Vitals gives you a chance to see, did your deployment help with it or degrade the experience somehow? And without field data, it's impossible to know how the users coming to your website are feeling about your website. How they interact with it matters and helps us determine the experience if we have that measuring in place. And it is also crucial for diagnosing issues, investigating real-time issues that occur on your website. It gives you a chance if there is a degraded experience to learn from your issues and then improve upon them. Maybe your website was impacted by a bot traffic that increased the LCP. So how do you improve on that, investigate, and avoid that happening in the future? This is one example from New Relic where there's an application's checkout. Largest content paint over here is 11 seconds, which is very poor. Someone there, being a real user, experienced this, and there are other attributes for you to debug and investigate further into what caused this to happen. Without having this field data, you didn't have a chance to know something like this happened. We know about server-side metrics or alerts, but alerting on front-end user experience matters as well. Also talking a little about coding logic. This is a simple example in Magento. I'll talk a little about what is happening here is you're getting the invoice IDs that you want to fetch from the database in Magento, and you're having a loop calling each ID request directly to the database and getting that data. For 100 invoices, and an example over here, you would be making around 100 requests. So it's proportional. The amount of requests increases as the amount of invoices you are fetching increase as well. On contrast, let's talk about similar logic but a small tweak. We are getting the same invoice IDs, but we are fetching them in one go from the database, of course. So for 100 invoices, now there is one request, and then you loop with the data, not calling the models inside the loop. So you can see in contrast how same number of invoices, but the request to the database is very different. And I would like to take this example over and talk a little about time complexity, something that I wasn't known to before, but now I do. So I keep that in my mind when I'm developing any solution now. So this is a graph where we have number of elements on horizontal axis, time on vertical. If we make the graph of the first logic, it would go something like this. In case in future and on production, maybe you are developing something on local, it is working really nicely, but on production, there are 10,000 invoices that you need to fetch. So that is not very good in terms of this logic, because now it's getting more complex, more time is being taken, more requests are being sent to the database. Whereas in contrast, the second logic we were looking at stays the same. Even if your count of objects or invoices you are fetching increases to 5,000 and 10,000 in future, there would still be one request. Maybe it takes longer, but it won't increase proportionally to the amount of invoices that you are fetching. So just understanding this basic helps developer know how they are writing the code as well. Because in development, writing the code is half the battle, but writing code that performs very well in future is crucial as well. And in Magento, if we talk, this is from my experience, and there could be many other challenges as well. I've seen these issues occurring in Magento, where we have loading models inside loops, which are heavy computation operations that cost a lot of resources. Deep nested loops, loops inside loops, again increases the complexity as the data grows. Overfetching, fetching a lot of data that we don't need, and complex computations in observers. Another thought to have while reviewing implementation is reviewing the extensions we have. I know they solve a really nice purpose for us, easy to plug and play, but there comes challenges with having those as well. So it's important to understand, first of all, does out-of-box application supports it? I've seen in many cases we have a feature implemented an extension that was actually similar to the out-of-box functionality. So we missed somewhere while reviewing our existing tool set and also reviewing the extension as well. So if it is a specific use case, maybe a little customization will help. Extensions come with like 10 plus features you might not need, but they also have that liability on you to develop or like keep upgrading them. And if we are going extension route, in many use cases we do, it's important to understand the documentation and support with it, and also understand the code by doing an audit. This gives extension providers and also our business to have the ability to review what's best for them, and extension providers are given chance to review, let customers review their code. Another feature that we know is caching that helps and we love having caching on our websites. But how do you know it's working without insights? Let's talk quickly about cache hit ratio. It's basically the percentage of requests that are served from cache, not the origin server. Very simple. But in contrast, what is cache miss? This would help you understand it better. You make additional trip to the origin server and get the response. Caching is very important, but without insights, how do you know it's working? There are multiple ways to track it. The way I love to do it is by using New Relic. If you have Fastly being used with New Relic, you have this capability to review caching stats on your system. This is a query that helps you see what cache misses are there versus hits, so you get an understanding of how your website is performing. And adding time series gives you a nice graph that you can see where in your last 30 days the caching was poor or it had some issues for you to investigate further. In Magento, we do know that product pages have unique URLs, category have their own unique URLs. So how do you monitor them globally? Like, give me insights into cache for product pages only. So I built this custom module. What it does is that it adds that page type into New Relic using VCL for Fastly. That gives you that insights that you might be looking for. Lastly, the choice of rendering matters a lot. Whenever you are planning a new project with any provider, it's always good to understand what type of rendering it is going to use, if it's mainly front-end focusing as well. Typically, two types of rendering are there: client-side and server-side. Always depends upon the use case, of course, but we should consider which one to go for after reviewing it thoroughly. I'll take this real-time example from one of my projects. Let's consider a Luma-based theme and search results page having product listing on it. And existing architecture for one of the projects I was reviewing is they were using client-side rendering for this. So let's talk about that and how we improved upon that. So client-side rendering being server gets you the response, browser renders the content, and content rendered user sees. Very simple. Similarly, server side, a server renders the content, HTML is rendered and then sent back to the browser. User visits the page. The main comparison over here is browser versus server doing most of the work. So first of all, client-side rendering, what was happening is loading screen, server response time around 2 seconds, quick, but there's still a skeleton. User hasn't seen the data, product data. Time to first byte around 2.5 seconds. There is a skeleton. Largest content paint, 5 seconds. Okay, now user sees the data. This is what's happening in the architecture of that implementation. The skeleton is rendered, an AJAX call back to the database is made, and real HTML comes on the client side rendered. And there is increased LCP because there are 2 times when server response comes and gets the HTML. Let's compare this to server side. There's a loading screen, 3 seconds more than the initial that we were talking about. And there is a rendered page, 4 seconds. On the back end, you can see the server directly calls the API even before rendering anything, and full HTML is rendered on the server, brought to browser, and user sees the content without the skeleton. You can see how it has improved LCP. Even though the server response time was more in this case, the user sees the content 4 seconds, 1 second earlier, and that matters a lot in terms of performance and conversion. So in this case, we moved from client side to server side, and that improved the interaction of customer and performance. Some differences between each. You can also go with a hybrid approach if needed based on your use case. So with that being said, if you are tracking core web vitals, optimizing that logic, keeping time complexity in mind, evaluating extensions carefully, getting cache hits visibility, and the rendering strategy before you implement a new feature, you would definitely improve on performance and have that metric to visualize how your current state of business is and how to take it in the positive direction from there. That being said, thanks everyone for getting me this opportunity, and I can take any questions.
Thank you, Balvesh.
Thank you. Thank you.
So any questions on web performance? Yep.
Yeah, my question would be, do you think cache warming would be another strategy?
Definitely.
Okay.
With Adobe Commerce, you can also have that built into your YAML files, and you can have certain pages that are going to be frequently visited by customers right after that deployment, already being warmed up by cache. So cache warming definitely helps if done strategically and on the most visited pages. Yeah, I agree. Sure.
Any more questions?
Hello. For example, if desktop version of website has awesome performance, but mobile has not good performance, what your first steps to work on that? Will you create separate mobile version? Would you disable part of the functionality or defer that? What is your recommendation?
In terms of rendering or just implementation as a whole?
In terms of improving the speed of the page load on mobile.
One is many businesses are governed by like what device are bringing the most business. So they tend to focus more on desktop maybe because of the experience. So it's important, like in New Relic, you can track using device type. So you get insights into mobile. And one another thing I've seen is a lot of times you are rendering both desktop version and mobile version, but hiding it through a CSS. That's not a good way to do it. So avoid rendering what is not needed for mobile on mobile devices. Decrease that content. And also, I haven't had an experience to have a different version or something really drastically different for mobile. It's just about having that tracking enabled for mobile as well, and also reviewing what scripts, what content does not need to get rendered on mobile device, and avoiding that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I have a question, but I'll see, is there any other questions in the audience? Yeah, I'm curious because, we do these things. Is there a way to automate running Web Core Vitals rather than manually running every time when you release something? Did you look into that at all?
Yeah, I actually, with the support of my team, we did build a custom dashboard in New Relic that would track it throughout the course of 30 days, maybe 90 days. It gives you page type insight and device type insight in that dashboard itself. So you can see a metric showing what days it was degrading and all that. And you can improve upon that using monthly reports is what we used to have for our clients to show them how we are improving on each cycle.
Fantastic. I'll look into that.